Doing another Mule Skinner down on your new one run. Hey, hey,
Spend an hour just playing music and staring at various photos. That's a Mule Skinner. That's what this song was about. Mule Skinner Blues was originally by Jimmy Rogers and the Yodeling Brakeman. Mule Skinner Blues, I don't know how old the song is, but that was from the 60s, but it goes back to the 30s. And anyway, that's a Mule Skinner. He's on a mule. He looks like he's probably, I don't know, 30 at least, but he's probably 15, because people aged pretty rapidly back then. Most of the Mule Skinners on this canal were in the age of 15 or so. The mules would tow a barge along a canal, and that's how people got coal from Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C. And of course the trains beat them, and the canal died. And I'll get into that later, but there's a reason why this book is called Mule Skinner Blues. My name is Mark Wedel. I wrote a book called Mule Skinner Blues. It's about riding bike through the mud to visit the White House and other things.
Yeah.
This is the mule right here. I've got it in front of you right here. Let's see. Let me shrink that down. This is the mule, Old Bessie. She's a gold mule. This is an electric Chowney, which is not recommended for long distance touring, but it's the most comfortable ride I've ever had, including most cars. And so you can just ride it forever through the mud, up mountains, to the White House. Anyway, I'm going to repeat myself so many times this evening. I'm just going to start reading. How many of you have read the book yet, by the way? So I don't need to really read this to you, read this for you, but I'm gonna, because it helps me focus. That's why I'm a writer. I don't like to talk. I just like to write, and I don't like people looking at me as I talk. That's one of the worst things ever. But anyway, this is a preface I wrote. I wrote this under the influence of drugs, mainly Sudafed, because I had a bad cold at the time. As we were getting ready to leave town for Christmas, I wrote this because this damn book had to be done. So anyway, the preface, Mule Skinner Blues by Mark Wedel. This work of nonfiction is for those of you who are thinking of riding a bicycle from Pittsburgh, PA to Washington, D.C. on trails of the Great Allegheny Passage and the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath. It is also for pedestrians and motor vehicle operators who wonder what kind of a fool would do such a thing. The author, a freelance journalist in Kalamazoo, Michigan, has published articles about biking around his home state. With no publication lined up to accept anything about his Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. ride, he decided to write a short piece about it and self-publish it as an ebook. Without the guidance of an editor or the restrictions of an established publication, the project spiraled out of control and became novella length. If you're a biker, you will learn that the GAP CNO will do what the GAP CNO. Let me get the map up here so you can see what I'm talking about. So anyway, the GAP, the Great Allegheny Passage from Pittsburgh to Cumberland, and then from Cumberland to Washington, is the CNO, the canal towpath, where the Mule Skinners towed barges. So anyway, if you're a biker, you'll learn what this will do to your mind, the mind and spirit of a reasonably fit rider. We hope if you attempt this ride or any long-distance bike tour that this book will help you better prepare the face of its physical, logistical, and psychological challenges, as well as understand the rewards gained from crazy-ass treks into the unknown. If you've never pedaled like this, we hope it's an inspiration for you to attempt your own little adventure. Please do this if you can. It's great, believe me. If you're a non-biking reader, know that the author is not the hardcore type of cyclist who wears spandex bibs and talks of carbon frames and gear ratios. You will not be bored to tears by chapters on pedal cadence and watts. He is also not the impressive adventurer who bikes across continents carrying only a pot and a tent. He is just some guy who got a wild hair to ride a cheap cruiser-type bike as far as he could to see what he could see. In addition to being a chronicle of pure adventure, reasonably pure adventure, this book is also a picture of a moment in contemporary history, late May 2017. Politically sensitive readers should be warned that the author expresses strong feelings about then-President Donald J. Trump. These political expressions are brief, and we hope readers agree do not devolve into tiresome rants. That late May 2017 moment is put into context with the history the author pedals through, visiting scenes from the French and Indian War to the Civil War, with details about canal building, railroad history, George Washington, Richard Nixon, and there's humor, and how the hell can this thing be summarized? It's the best midlife crisis you ever could have had. It's better than sleeping with whores or buying a Corvette. That's what you should write. The author's wife, Jules, interrupts with suggestions for his preface. Dear, biking alone through unfamiliar lands is probably not as dangerous as sleeping with whores, nor as far as midlife crises go. But wait, midlife? There's no mention in the book of the author's age. It's hoped the reader will picture him as virile, though unkempt and a bit crazed and trail happy at moments. But he does reveal he's old enough to remember Nixon and Watergate. There is a point in the book where he calls his bike a dirty whore. There is some profound and obscene language in this work, but we promise no adult content nor unnatural physical intercourse with bicycles. There are lots of pretty pictures. Lots of pretty pictures. We'll see a lot of them tonight. And blah, blah, blah. Where does this trail go? What are you going to see? Only one way to find out. Hop on your mule and ride. Oh, a mule. Most comfortable bike in the world. Started at Pittsburgh. First day, went to Kalamazoo.
One day.
Second day, went to Myersdale. That was the worst day. Then I went downhill to Cumberland. Then Little Orleans, going slower here. Then Williamsport. Then Harper's Ferry. Then Washington, D.C. Now, Great Allegheny Passage, Gap Trail, that's a regular rail trail that is pretty easy to ride as far as the surface goes. It's like the Cal Haven Trail. If any of you have been on Cal Haven, that's what it's like. It's a nice, solid trail. But it kind of goes uphill a little bit. This is the... Now imagine this stretched out over, 350 miles. It's not that steep, really, when you stretch it out, 350 miles. And of course, it's over 2,000 feet high there. But yeah, it's, I thought I could do it with no problem, that first slope. From Pittsburgh to Kalamazoo, that wasn't bad, but then this is when I started hallucinating around here. Because it's such a gradual slope. It's not that steep at all. It's just a tiny upward hill. But it was just after a day, after about 60 miles of that, and then it started raining. And then I started talking to farm poultry on the side of the trail that I saw. And then I got to Myersdale there, and I went into a diner and a motel that was all one thing, a diner and a motel. And I ran in and I just kind of babbled like, Gabby Hayes, is that the name of the guy in the old westerns? Yeah. Babbling like a mountain man. I stuck a feather in my helmet. I had really given myself to the woods, to the hills. Let's look at some pictures. This is the first day. This is a Dead Man's Hollow, basically just out of Pittsburgh. It's a little hollow in the hills. I saw a sign and went down the trail and saw the ruins of old factories, all graffitied up. And I wrote a whole chapter about this that I'm not going to read, but it's just about discovering things on the trail. This is why I do it. If you're driving a car through the Pittsburgh area, you're not going to find this unless you're looking for it. You're not going to just walk into a place where there's the ruins of old factories. They say it's haunted because it's Dead Man's Hollow. You're not going to find that in a car. Maybe you'll find it in a motorcycle, I don't know. But being on a bike and you're going 10 miles an hour, you've got a chance to just stop and stare at things. Walk into the woods. Listen to birds. Look at old ruins. This is my first motel. I'm not the kind of biker who likes to camp. I can camp, but that means more work after riding about 60 miles. I don't like to set up a tent, and I wouldn't want to cook my own meals. I like to go in a cheap motel and order pizza and watch TV and have a real bathroom at my leisure and a real bed and a door that locks and not have to worry about bears or meth heads or hillbillies or anything like that. So that's just a typical scene. And look at how clean that bike is. That's the first day. It's so clean. I've got my 2016 I voted sticker right there. Which that did not survive the ride for some reason. I replaced that with a Ramones sticker of the rock band, the rock quartet, the Ramones. It's kind of similar with the eagle and stuff, except the eagle is saying, look out below, and it's carrying a baseball bat for beating on brass, if you know something. And it's just a typical scene on the trail, except there's people on it. Most of the time, there was just nobody on the trail. It's one of the busiest trail systems in the country because it's out east and it's very popular, but it was late May and bad weather and just nobody there. This is, I'm not sure how this town is pronounced. Maybe my wife knows. Ohio Pile? Ohio Pile, yeah. It's a nice, it's a sweet, huh?
I've been there.
You've been there? Okay. I don't know how to pronounce anything. I avoid talking to people, so that covers that. a really nice tourist town, but it's for tourists who want to kayak, bike, and etc. So those people are just there to ride around on the trail. So the trail goes through there, and there are just, I have too many pictures like this. I realize I'm not sure exactly where this is at. Is this a bridge overlooking a river, further south in Pennsylvania or further or north? I don't know. Is Ohio Pile? I'm not sure, but it's a river. And this is, there are miles and miles of things like this. I'll be riding through trees and through woods, and I'll just be in misery, and it'll be raining, I'll be going up that hill, and I'll get the sense of doom, despair, and not necessarily despair, but a feeling that I could die right here, not ever reaching my motel, my comfy motel room. But then I'll go on a bridge and I'll look over and it'd be like, oh my God, look at this shit. I write in the book, I say to myself, look at this shit. And I'm sorry, it's the only thing I can say. I'm not eloquent. Look at this shit. There's rapids, and there's trees and hills and mountains. And this is one of the rivers that George Washington, young George Washington, Colonel George Washington, when he was working for the king, he was sent to try to kick the French out of Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh wasn't a town, but they wanted to build a fort there, and the British wanted to build a fort there. And anyway, long story short, George kind of accidentally started the French and Indian War, or was part of the reason it started. Accidentally shot a Frenchman. I don't know. Maybe stabbed him with a bayonet. I don't know. But anyway, I get into that history a little bit, and I just start to realize as I'm riding, there are plenty of historical markers on the trail, that I'm just riding through history that we don't have here in Michigan. We just don't have the history here. I mean, we have history, but Gibson Guitar Factory, that's history, but it's not George Washington. Anyway. Here's something that's not showing up. Okay. That's nothing. Oh, there's something. Yeah. Here we are at the Eastern Continental Divide. This is when things go downhill, and I mean that in a good way, downhill. I like this picture because it shows touring bicyclists in their natural habitat. I don't know if you have an image in your mind of the cyclist who's wearing his spandex and trying to be all fashionable and such, but when you're riding hundreds of miles, you're not trying to achieve any look, really. You're just trying to be comfortable. You're loaded down with bags, your panniers, your saddlebags, your front bags, rear bags. You're just, I don't know how many tons this guy's carrying, but he's probably the type that camps at night. It's just, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, he probably looks at me and he thinks that's the type of wuss who gets a motel room. And I am. That's the kind of wuss I am. I get a motel room. I'm not going to camp out there in the rain and do that extra work and take my tent out. And what am I going to do? Sit around a campfire all night? Anyway, that's the Eastern Continental Divide. Leaving the Gulf of Mexico watershed, entering the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It's all downhill. Thank God. Here's a big Savage Tunnel. That's just after the divide there. The Big Savage Tunnel, I can't remember how long it is. It's about a mile or half mile. Luckily there's lights there so you can kind of see. It's an old train tunnel built in 1911. Big Savage Mountain is right there above it, going up. It's named after a guy named Savage. I can't remember his first name, but Savage was a surveyor in about 300 years ago, wandering the woods and hills here with his surveying team. They got lost, they started to starve. Savage, there are two stories that either Savage offered himself to his starving team, his starving surveyors, like, if you're hungry, you can eat me, you know. And the other story says that his team were looking at Savage saying, you got us lost. We kind of think you should be the one to go first, and we're going to eat you. Luckily, they were discovered, they were found. Some people found them, they fed them. And I can only imagine how the rest of the surveying thing went. They went around the hills of Pennsylvania and North Maryland. It was just an uncomfortable rest of the trip. This is from inside the tunnel. It was raining, so there are many moments like this when it's raining and I find some place to shelter and I just stand there and I stare as people who brave the rain go by. And there is nothing more miserable to me than being on a bike in the rain in the middle of the woods and just not getting where you need to be getting. That's why I'm wearing this raincoat, by the way. I just wanted to show you the fashion, my fashion on the trail. Just basic, you know, I'm not trying to look good. I'm gonna take this thing off and stuff. I might fall and hurt myself. Anyway, the rain, oh the rain. Going uphill in the rain, that was maybe people reading it, that's a very entertaining part of the book, but it's not my favorite part of the book. My favorite part of the book, and there's more misery here, is the canal trail. The canal trail. I'm going to just start reading. Actually, before I start reading, we're talking about the C&O Canal, and I wanted to show this informational film. I hope we can play it. I hope we're connected to the internet. I think we are. This is recorded in 1917. I think Edison himself made this film. This is part of the canal called the where the Paw Paw Tunnel is. I'm just going to play it. A quiet old waterway with the and it still looks exactly like that, except in color and it's in focus. There's hills. And the Mule Skinner is towing a barge. We're filming from the barge. It's actually a little boat. The tunnel cut through the mountains is 1 mile long. It was built entirely by hand and has been in use since 1840.
So the canal goes to the tunnel?
Yes, it does. Just watch it go through the tunnel. The mule has to keep on this little narrow thing, this little strip of land. Luckily there's a fence, a little wood railing to keep him from falling in. And you go into absolute darkness, inky black darkness on a canal into, we fast forward to the end of the canal, into the tunnel. And you come out and there's all this carved rock. And this is exactly what I went through, except, you know, I wasn't smoking a pipe, as you'll see. I wasn't smoking a pipe, and that's not how I looked. And I wasn't in a boat, but I was on my bicycle over there. I used to smoke cigars, but I don't smoke cigars and ride a bike at the same time. That's kind of foolish. But this is like the last days of the canal. The canal basically ended in the 20s after, I think, the same flood as the Johnstown flood. I'm not sure. It's Potomac flooded, and it's like, okay, this is pointless, really. They're doing a little fossil fuel humor. They're not actually using coal here. They're making lunch, and the mule is eating grass on the side of the trail. But this is how they carried coal and wood and whiskey and whatever up and down that river.
Did people travel that way too?
They had some people, there were some passengers, mainly for fun. You'll see why there wasn't many passengers, actually. It'll be obvious why passengers didn't really use this as a practical route. But it looks exactly like that. There's these old farms, there's geese on the side of the river, the canal. The railroad. That's why people didn't really use this boat, this barge, this canal anymore. There's a barge, and oh, there goes a train. And
So much better.
the canal was first, but it wasn't that much earlier. It was just a few years earlier before they started the train. They started building the train system. And as somebody who used to write for a newspaper, I really feel for the people on the canal, the people trying to make money off the canal as they're watching the trains go by. It's such a sad march of progress.
Does the Amtrak go through there, Mark? Or?
I don't think, the only trains I saw when I was in that area were freight trains. So anyway, we're not going to see it all, but I just want to show that part. What time is it? I'm gonna lose track of time. 7:27. That's good. Okay. I want to read another chapter about that tunnel, about being the tunnel and the canal trail. I don't know how much of this I should read, but I'll read some of it. All right, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the canal trail. The canal trail is mud. Rain had gone through there. I talked to other bicyclists before. Everybody I talked to said it's going to be pure mud. And I was afraid about what I would find, and that's what I found, pure mud. And I'd ride through this stuff, and I'd just start laughing because my feet would be covered with mud. My legs, my back, my bags, everything would be covered with mud. And it's just such a hopeless feeling that any trace of sanity just flees. And you become one with the mud. You become a mud person, basically. Oh yeah, there we go. That was after 12 miles. That was the first 12 miles of the mud. That was the next day. That's the backpack I was wearing. That's the next day. I don't know why I had this water bottle out in the open. I didn't want to put my mouth on that thing. And I just leave that picture there and try to read about this experience of going through the tunnel. Actually, I'm going to start with Paw Paw. Why don't I start with Paw Paw? It's not like Paw Paw, Michigan. Okay. This whole area, the beginning of the canal trail from Cumberland, Maryland to Paw Paw, West Virginia to where I stayed that night, it's just nobody. It's like the Upper Peninsula. There are tiny, tiny, tiny little towns. And I was trying to find some place to eat. And I read on the internet, I'm not even going to read about that. You'll read about it in the book. I stopped in Paw Paw, West Virginia. There's a nice bike trail leads me off the towpath, along a state highway, across the Potomac and into town. According to my research, Paw Paw options for food and supplies include an ice cream shop, a dollar store, and a gas station, all which sound better than what I dubbed the White Genocide Cafe because they were covered with racist posters, and I won't even talk about that. There are some people in the boonies who have different viewpoints than we do. You know, it's interesting and scary. The town is tiny. Stand in the center by the gas station, and you can see all of Paw Paw's downtown commercial district, about 5 buildings. I noticed a little lit up open sign blinking in the window of an old brick house. An old brick house. It's either an antique store, or I rolled up to it. smelled food, parked my bike by the back of an old meat cooker, went inside. The place looks like somebody's clean old house, wood paneling with homey restaurant tables. Take off my backpack since it's covered in mud. There were no customers, but it was around 3 p.m. A lady comes out to greet me. I ask, are you still serving? Am I too filthy to eat here? You're fine, she says. You coming out on the trail? Yeah. Either that or I've been throwing buckets of liquid shit into a pan. I didn't say that part out loud. That was what I thought. I sit, compulsively check to see if they've got Wi-Fi. Nope. See if I can get service with my hotspot. Nope. I don't need to check anything. I'm sure Yelp users agree that this is the best restaurant in town. Amanda's Place. Amanda's Place, the menu says. There's lacy white curtains concealing the restroom doors. Look out the window. The day is fine. No rain. No need to check the weather. I should let people know I'm alive, but I know I'm alive. I order some sort of turkey bacon whatever wrap. A boy, maybe about 9, blonde buzz cut, throws the door open. Mister, is that your bike out back? Because it fell over. I was just walking by and it fell over. He said in a string of words in a pure West Virginian accent like a hyper-Opie Taylor. I get up. Yeah, it does that. Fall over by itself, no one touching it or anything. Really, I believe him. My bags are heavy, my kickstand inadequate. I got so much crap in my bags, it's too heavy, so it just falls over. We go, I kind of suspected he was touching it or poking at it and it fell over, but I can't prove anything. We go around back, I pick up my bike, struggle to lean it against the old cooker. He's joined by a silent, smaller partner. They ogle, hyper-Opie amidst a string of questions and observations. You ride the canal trail, because if you see a dead body, you better call 911, because there's a man went out on the trail, never came back on the news. They think he died out there. Some people get lost and they die on the trail, so you better call 911 if you find a body. Well, I'll keep my eye out. We saw a dead cat by the road, still warm. We're no bite marks or nothing. We'll kill a cat like that. This is a nice bike. We got bikes, but not like this. He talked just like that, I swear. I tell them I put 13,000 miles on it. I'm going to Washington, D.C. Whoa! Let me know if it falls over again. I should get inside. My food's probably done. I go back in, kind of envious that these kids could get on their bikes and explore the trail, go looking for dead bodies and be on all Huck Finn-like. Though they probably don't right now, being a little too young to pedal along the state highway that crosses the border. But there's this world of adventure waiting for them, and I hope they saw me as a representative from that world, a possible future for them. Hope they saw me as an explorer and an adventurer, not some drifting geek. The wrap is on the table. It's the best wrap I've ever eaten. If you ride 50 miles a day, every bite of food is amazing. I can't believe how amazing it is. Even just a bacon wrap, a turkey bacon wrap. Adventure is to be had, worlds to discover. Hope that these kids get beyond this tiny town. A school bus stops outside. Teen girls get out, head for the restaurant house. Maybe they live here. By the time they get to the door, the girls are surrounded by younger versions of Larry the Cable Guy. They hang out by the steps. I squeeze through them as I leave. I leave Pawpaw, West Virginia, head out on the trail to the Pawpaw Tunnel. The tunnel is probably the main reason the canal lost its race with the train, the reason it only got halfway to its destination. It's why Washington's dream, George Washington's dream, well, it didn't die, but it took other forms as an industrial revolution future he couldn't imagine. To get barges past 6 miles of Potomac River bends that were walled by formidable rock cliffs, canal builders cut through a mountain for a mile. They blast through rock, tunneled 3,118 feet. Methodist minister and contractor Lee Montgomery began construction in 1836 with estimates of completion in 2 years, the historical sign by the tunnel reads. It was done in 1850 after around 14 years of ethnic and labor violence. Montgomery employed Irish, English, Welsh, and German laborers. The Irish and Brits, of course, hated each other. Workers got cranky because, thanks to a poor estimate of how much the whole would cost, Montgomery wasn't always able to pay them. There were riots, Irish went to war against the British camps, workers torched other workers' shanties in a tavern in Old Town. A few years later, there were riots in Little Orleans, a town about 13 miles past the east end of the tunnel. Montgomery sank his finances into the project and sank into debt and litigation. Since the rest of the canal from the tunnel up to Cumberland was completed by this time, the C&O had to find a subcontractor to finish the hole. In the tunnel, there is only room for one-way traffic. Occasionally, boatmen would battle it out over who had the right of way. There was one path on a narrow ledge over the water, just wide enough for a mule and a mule skinner. Wood railing kept them from falling into the canal. There were no lights. People would sing to themselves from feeling like they were in some sort of pitch black abyss. And that's what it looks like as I roll up a pitch black abyss. It's late afternoon, sun shining on a green hill before me. A wall of green with a black hole. I turn on my headlight on my handlebar, strap my other headlight on my head. My only phobia is of spiders. I think of Raiders of the Lost Ark scene where Indiana Jones' traitorous guide Satipo gets covered with tarantulas in the cave. However, I remind myself there are no tarantulas in Maryland. The entrance is made of cut stone blocks like steps up the side, a real Temple of Doom look. Cold cave air is coming from the tunnel, stagnant black water. The railing is original, the thick wood with tow rope marks. The curving wall ceiling is old brick, water drips down here and there. The trail surface is as it was when mules trod on it, horribly uneven. I do what I was told not to do by the guy in the bike shop and by the sign at the tunnel that demands walk your bike. I pedal very carefully into the dark. This is some 19th century darkness. Daylight quickly falls behind me. There's a tiny bit of light over a half mile ahead. My GPS beeps a warning as it loses sight of satellites. The lights on my bike and my head project two circles of comfort, LEDs certainly superior to the lamps the boats may have had. But still, all I see in the circles are the red-gray brick wall, the gray dirt stone path, the wood railing. On the other side of the railing, a horrible void awaits. I have to really try to go, I would have to really try to go over the rails to fall into the water, but the thought of falling in absolute darkness is almost as terrifying as getting covered with spiders. The tour guide I'm planning to write later will recommend anyone with phobias of the dark, drowning, and or being buried alive should instead make the arduous hike over the mountains on the bypass trail. And there is a bypass trail. You can go over the mountain if you want to carry all your junk over the mountain, not go through the tunnel. The brick wall is reminiscent of the cask of Amontillado. Do you remember that Poe story? Edgar Allan Poe, guy gets bricked up in the wall, and that's what I was thinking, getting bricked up in the wall. I'm getting very close to the wall, nearly scrape against it, overcorrect, lurch toward the railing, hit bumps in the path, stop. I don't get off to walk the bike, but I stop pedaling, gingerly roll, towing the surface beneath me. A near rain of water is leaking through this portion, making puddles and eroding the path, streams coming down the brick. As I reach the end, it's like another world. In the shade of a mountain, a small canyon of cut rock, a little waterfall. That's what I was saying. And that's like, this is my favorite picture that I took, my favorite scene, my favorite place in the world at the time, because it's like I'd entered another world in another time. You've got this waterfall coming down the mountain. You've got this hole in the wall, hole in the mountain that was dug out, blasted out by people who hated each other. And you got my little bike right there. And you got the old wood railing. That's the original railing that they had that you saw in that movie as they towed the barges through. It's just, this is why I do this. I bitch and I complain through the book about mud and going up hills and being tired and hallucinating and the misery and the feelings of doom. But then I come to things like this, and it's like, oh my God, I got to this on that bicycle, pedaling a little city-type bicycle And it's like the message I want to get through this book is, well, mainly I was trying to find out why I'm doing this. Writing is a good way to find out why you do something. Why am I doing these trips? This is like the, I don't know, fourth, fifth one I've done. I went from Kalamazoo to Cadillac and back. I went along Lake Michigan one year. I went up the Upper Peninsula, top of the Minton. And it's like, why do I do this every year? It's not normal. This isn't right. But it's like, I feel like I'm on horseback or something, just exploring the country. And you can't get that in a car. So, enough of my preaching. Okay, good. Oh yeah, this is further along from that spot. The canal is just a ditch of water. Saw a lot of turtles in there. The pathway is just becoming another muddy mess. Rock wall.
Is there any current to the
Not really. It's some of it's like dry. It's like no water is getting to it. Basically, the Potomac, it runs along the side of the Potomac, parallel. They managed to back up water from the Potomac into the canal they dug. They got locks that lift it down towards Washington, D.C. level, you know, the swamp level. And since, easy joke. But since it hasn't been used since 1927, there are some areas for tourists that they have actual boats that go up and down. You can have a real mule tow you in a boat. But most of it is like this. It's just reverting back to the wild. Some of it's just a dry ditch. But there's no current at all. There's a lot of lock houses. All the locks right here, you've got the old locks that the boats were lifted up and brought down. You've got the lock houses. Whole families would live in these houses. Fathers would run the lock, and the kids eventually would run the lock after him, I guess. All these lock houses. And I read a lot of reviews, a lot of people writing on the web about riding their bike through here, through this whole trail system. And some people would be like, it's kind of boring riding through all the trees and stuff. It's like boring. There's no, it's just kind of boring, you just miles and miles of this. But you really can't get to the good swings of depression, isolation, and mania. Plus the peacefulness of being in the woods like that. Nobody around. Absolutely peaceful. In the woods. You've got your old mule you're riding. And I suspect that's how people felt before the internal combustion machine came along and electricity and that newfangled steam locomotive came along. Just hours of riding your horse or your mule or walking through the woods to try to find out what is at the other end of the trail. I sometimes hallucinate to myself that I'm an explorer. That's Potomac. That's where they dammed up the Potomac. They made still waters, what they call still waters, which were supposedly still enough to drag the boats along, because the rest of the Potomac is like really heavy current and there's rapids and stuff. That's why they had to make the canal in the first place. And just more mud. You see here the canal is a ditch of weeds. There's a road going by on this old bridge, getting near Harper's Ferry. And here is Harper's Ferry. I had to get up this bridge. There's a really hilarious part of the book. I think it's funny, though I was angry as hell at the time, because there were tourists blocking my way on the pedestrian bridge and the stairs. I had to carry my bike up the stairs, up these, you'll have to read it. And one of the only pictures I took of actual people looking at me, this lady, we're in Harper's Ferry, right at that spot where that monument is where John Brown tried to start a slave revolt, doomed. horribly doomed slave revolt. He didn't succeed. He was hung. Everybody was killed. And I see this lady sitting here feeding a stray cat. And I tried to talk to her, and she's speaking to me in a foreign language. I couldn't understand what she was saying. She couldn't understand me. I asked her if I could take her picture. She nodded, yeah. And then I realized when I get home, looking at the picture, I thought it was an act of kindness, but the cat is obviously fat, and he's not a stray. He probably lives up there somewhere. He's just mooching off tourists. You know he is. But again, these moments of absolute exhaustion and misery, and then I go around a corner, and it's like, look at this shit. This is like something a 19th century landscape painter probably painted. This is the Great Falls area of the Potomac. You're looking down the Potomac, there's rapids, there's rocks. This is just maybe about 15 miles south of Washington, D.C. It's amazing. Again, the Great Falls, rocks, rushing waters. And you know George Washington was looking at that stuff thinking, if it wasn't for that, I could get a boat up there and kick the French ass, all the French ass I need to. I could get men up there. I could take over the rest of the country if I could get a boat up this river. And this is the last part of the trail. Just as I see the skyline of Washington, D.C., I stop and I take a picture of the bike, and when I got home, I zoomed in on this, and it's just like, there's this cow pie forming right there. And I'm about to go into one of the most expensive hotels in Washington, D.C. I'm about to go to the Watergate Hotel, and I'm going to go to the Watergate Hotel, and at this time I'm wearing a Rock and Bowl bowling t-shirt, or not a t-shirt, a button-down shirt, a bowling shirt. That's a bit sweaty and a bit muddy. And shorts, cargo shorts, muddy shoes. I'm going to walk in Washington, D.C. looking like I've been rolling around with pigs. And I'm a little nervous as to what people are going to do when they see me. Because, you know, what is this bicycle hobo trying to do getting into our classy motel? I don't know how much of this I want to read. How much time do we have? 15 minutes? Those of you who have read the book, you got any special suggestions? Do you want political content?
Yes.
Do you want
political? We want the happy ending here.
the happy ending?
I want to hear about the guy who
I like the gas.
helps you with your bike at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, the bike, the guy who
All the
helps.
Somalis,
Huh?
all the guys from, the bellman.
Oh, everybody.
The doorman. Read about the doorman that told him to move on.
The doorman?
Yeah,
Oh, the guy.
yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where that part
He
starts.
couldn't find a way into the Watergate.
Oh yeah, I could have found my way into the Watergate. Wait a minute, let me get the right picture up here. The Watergate. There it is. That's the picture I took of the Watergate. And this is how I remember the Watergate. Are you old enough to remember these times? I'm sure some of you are. Right down here is a tiny little gas station. That gas station is still there. A tiny little gas station. Looks like it's from the 1920s because it is from the 1920s. Built there, and it stayed there when they put up this big monstrosity, this bit of modern architecture. Oh. So anyway, I'm going to start reading that chapter and skip ahead as I need to. Chapter 19, Lodging, Night 7, Nostalgic for Nixon at the Watergate. Opening with this picture. It's that's from 1972, but I started in 1974. On an August day in 1974, my parents decided that they had to get out of the house. They were going to Lake Michigan, the beach at South Haven, and we are going to have a nice time. Mom, stressed, drinking coffee, listening to the news on WKZL, smoking more cigarettes than usual that morning, announces, "I just have to get out of this house." Yay! I'm 7. I like a nice time at the beach. It's over an hour's car ride away. It's a trip that eats up a day. We go at least once a summer, but there was something weird about this trip, something tense. We go, I had a nice beach time. I'm 7 years old. I'm swimming in the big lake. It's like a big ocean, but no salt, no sharks, hot sand burning my feet. The Beatles come together, tinny from some long hair's AM radio. Stop at the A&W drive-in for root beer and hot dogs on the way home. But Mom and Dad, I don't know, they seemed troubled. My older brother Larry stayed home. When we got back, he filled us in on the news that President Nixon was on TV and he was quitting, and he looked like he was about to cry. I went to my room to mull that over. The president was almost crying on TV, quitting? Something must be horribly wrong. I wasn't that attuned to the political moods of the country, but something had been sucking the fun out of things. I would turn on the TV for Saturday morning cartoons, and the stupid, boring Watergate hearing show was on. So stupid and boring, it didn't even have commercials. I remember finding humor in a Mad magazine, an image of a bald eagle all tangled up in reel-to-reel tape. I showed it to Mom, and she didn't seem to find it funny. My parents weren't amused by the Nixon gags on Sonny and Cher. They got tense whenever this Watergate thing was mentioned. My parents were devout Republicans. Watergate was a dark presence I couldn't help but notice from my little kid vantage point. It had been creeping around since 1972, but in the following years it grew expansively into everything like mold. A lot of the humor in popular culture was about it, dark, cynical gags, and so many Nixon impersonations. I'm not a crook. Always there, whenever I turned on the TV and that boring, stupid hearings weren't on. The mold stayed in my brain, creeping around somewhere in the back all my life. A weird, dark humor, a fascination with it all, a grimy nostalgia for the early 70s. I wore a vintage Nixon's the One campaign button when being a smart-ass nerd punk in high school. In college, I read books on the election of '72 and Watergate. Somewhere there's a videotape of me romping around demented in a Comstock, Michigan field, wearing a rubber Nixon mask, part of a project with my friends in Kalamazoo, with my friends in the Kalamazoo band, Buddha Christ. You can Google that if you want to find that. It's embarrassing. But I was 20-something years old. So in 2017, I'm planning to ride a bicycle to Washington, D.C. during the first few months of an administration already more despised than Nixon's, with talk of impeachable crimes in the air, scandals that are beyond causing mold spores to sprout. They seem to be cultivating fields of mutant toxic mushrooms that cause a very bad trip. Where am I going to stay? Sure as fuck is it going to be the Trump Hotel. Let me say that out loud. It sure as fuck is it going to be the Trump Hotel. No need to mutter that. It's not a controversial statement, is it? I don't know. Sorry if I'm getting political here. It was on my mind. After 62 miles on my little bicycle, I reached a Watergate. Seeing the curved mid-century architecture is like seeing a celeb who's always been on TV, more so in the past than now. It's like seeing a star from my childhood, a weird nostalgic thrill like I've just met Cher or Rich Little. Oh, the Watergate. I have no idea where the hotel entrance is. The Watergate complex is a group of structures housing condos, a hotel, and the office where G. Gordon Liddy, E. Howard Hunt, and a handful of CIA-linked others broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters June 17, 1972. Where's a historical plaque for that? Where's a sign for the hotel? I ride around the complex, see a little gas station at the little point of property at the Watergate's north end. It's still here. When planning the ride, I was examining exhibit number 1, a 1972 aerial photo of the complex, marveling at how the mammoth modern structures were looming over this tiny little Exxon station that looked like it was built in 1927. It's a Valero station now, but the old grimy building is still there. I parked my bike, go in, buy water, ask the guy where the hotel entrance is. It's down the block, he says, pointing. Oh, the front of the building, I say, feeling like a dummy. I've been on the trail in the wilderness. I've forgotten how cities work. He's smiling, friendly, like he's reassuring me I'm not a dummy. I assume from his accent and features he's from a northern part of the African continent. I ride along the front, see no sign for a hotel. But the first entrance, there's a big lobby, sure looks hotel-like. I try to park the bike, it's wobbling all over under the weight of bags. I attempt to lean it against some large concrete thing. Out of the corner of my eye, a doorman has walked from behind the podium to yell at me, "Get that bike off that platter!" And of course, I'm filthy and dirty and just crusty. I have a room reserved under the name Wedel. I say this with the utmost confidence of the fact that I've already spent nearly $300 on a room here that should grant me automatic privilege that will shine through all the mud and the sweat and the appearance of being a crusty bicycle hobo. The hotel is that way, he points and goes back inside. Yes, this is the condos lobby. It was the condos lobby, not the hotel lobby. Anybody could make that mistake. So anyway, I go to the hotel. They're all nice. Everybody I meet except for the dick who was yelling at me at the condo. Everybody I meet worked in the gas station, the hotel. They all had accents. They were all from Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and they were all so damn polite to me. It was amazing. And I'm not saying that, you've got to be from another country to be polite and when you're working in the service industry of Washington, D.C., but it just made me think about who was in the White House at the time. Anyway, let's not get ranty yet. I'm going to skip ahead. I had guys, the doormen at the Watergate. Let's see, they all have accents. They all appear to be from the same African country. Somalia? Everybody working in this town, except for the dick at the condos who yelled at me, seems to be from another country. They stare with intense interest as I swing my leg off my mule. One leaps to my aid. "I've got a room reserved," I start, but they're all acting as if they already know. Yes, we have a place for your bike. I'll get these." We both go for my bags. He can't get them off with them all latched and strapped onto the rack. I got it. Please, it's my custom as a Midwesterner to take care of my own crap. Unlike the dick at the condos, they're all smiling, helpful, friendly. "Wow," they say when I tell them that I've pedaled for days through the woods to get here. They look with amazement at my bike, caked in mud. I'm not some bike hobo, I'm something exotic to them. I start thinking of Sudan's lost boys wandering through the desert, fleeing war. Nah, I didn't do anything special. I'm just a dork on a bike. One rolls a mule into a storage room, another opens doors, leads me to the front desk. Assistant front office manager Kang says, "We've been expecting you. Would you like some water?" Again, an accent. All good people working in this town are from other countries. Nah, I got water in this bag somewhere. I start digging into my dirt-encrusted backpack. I must look a bit rough around the edges. She vanishes under a desk, reappears quickly with a bottle of Watergate brand water. They have water bottles with Watergate labels on them. That's the kind of place we've got here. The lobby is giving me a mild disorientation, like I'm on the verge of a migraine or seizure. Everything is curvy, wavy. Rolls of parallel gold-silver bars roll along curvy walls, along the front of the curvy desk, spiral up the pillars. Hidden lights hit everything just right to make you feel like you're floating in an optical illusion. A purposeful mix of extravagance and hallucination. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the description of everything, but the Watergate was basically not run down as a motel. It was mainly being seen as kind of the second-rate, high-priced motel in the city. There were better places. So they spent $120-something million a couple of years ago to redo the whole thing. And it's just, I felt so out of place there. I was hoping it would feel like 1972, but it feels like some bizarre time in the future when, I don't know what. And they've got this weird 70s theme where you've got old 70s and 60s rock and roll playing the Watergate bar. You've got pictures of Bob Dylan on the wall as if that means anything to the rich bastards who stay there. I'm not saying that they're all rich bastards, but I spent a lot of money there, so buy a book, please. This is a fairly long chapter. I want to read I want to read something that explains this. So I'm pretending to be Hunter S. Thompson. I drank 3 bourbons that night. I get up early. I wash down the mud. For some reason, there's mud in my shower. I get on my bike and I ride. It's 4 in the morning. I wake up at 4 a.m. This chapter is entitled Dirt for Donald. Wake up at 4 a.m. This sometimes happens when I'm on these rides. Wake up. Where am I? A motel. Why? I'm on a bike journey. Today I must ride X miles. Gotta eat. Gotta drink coffee. Load up the bike. Ride. What time is it? Damn it, that early? Try to sleep another hours. But I'm in the Watergate. I want to pedal around town, see sunrise in Trump's Washington. Go to the White House, righteously flip it off. Gotta do that before Jules gets here. My wife Jules is gonna pick me up. I get up, mess around in the room, state-of-the-art coffee. I mess with the room, state-of-the-art coffee pod machine like a monkey trying to drive a car. I drink coffee, eat a lar-bar. Just a few hours before, near midnight, I'd come back to my door after drinking at both Watergate's bars. I noticed with some shame that on the hallway side, visible to all, the door had a smear of dried mud. In the room, muddy bags were dropping little mud clumps on the floor. The Watergate Hotel does not have a high-pressure hose outside like the Econo Lodge in Harper's Ferry. They know their customer. You get there, there's a hose, you spray your bike down, you're good to go. But the Watergate has no hoses. Losers. I took the bags into the gleaming modern shower, sprayed them off with a detachable shower head. Grime and filth swirled around it on the immaculate black tile. I tried to spray it down the drain, but grit and dirt flowed into the corners. Dirty, dirty water splashed on the glass walls. I took the white towels in, wiped down the bags. Towels picked up more filth. Took a towel to the room door, wiped it down, made a pile of filthy towels for the maid to wonder about. Having had 3 bourbons on top of a 60-mile ride, I laughed. And I felt a bit of horror at the maniacalness of it all. This is what it must feel like to be a first-time murderer, trying to wash your blood down the drain, trying to clean up every bit of red, but finding more here and there. Now, then it's morning. I'm feeling a little bit more sane now after 4 hours of sleep. Only 4 hours of sleep. I go check the shower. This is the kind of shower a $125 million renovation could get a hotel, a work of art meant to cleanse stars of screen and politics. Its floor still has a film of mud. Spray it down, take a shower, put on the clothes, blah, 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 blah. Go down to the lobby, feel a bit of anxiety that I'm about to tell the morning crew that I have a bicycle in storage, and yes, the muddy one, but they all seem to know without me opening my mouth. Yes, sir, right away, sir, your bicycle, right away, sir. I tip them, go ride into the still dark city. It feels good to ride on pavement with no hills on a bike not weighed down by all my possessions. I have to do this now before checkout time so I can leave the bags in the room. In thinking about this last ride of the trip, I realize if I go skulking around the White House, loaded down with bags bulging, that I might attract suspicion. I promised my wife Jules that I wouldn't end up on CNN. I pedal to see Abe, a Lincoln Memorial. George Washington has his illuminated spire, but Lincoln has his temple, a massive temple in the dark, the city quiet. I got pictures, but I don't have a picture here. Ride to the mall, see George's modest monument. Hey George, remember that time when you were looking to kick some French ass for the king? And you were thinking about how there's got to be a better way to travel up that river? You wouldn't believe it, but the reason I'm here on this weird mechanical pony 264 years later is kind of connected to that. I take a left, ride down 15th Street on a protected bike lane, past General Sherman's statue, past the big Treasury building, Pennsylvania Avenue, closed to traffic since which terrorist attack? There's a gatehouse, short pillars made to stop a truck, authorized vehicles only signs intimidating me. I'm on a vehicle, certainly not authorized, but I see a bike commuters breeze through, so I enter. The house is so familiar. That house is so familiar. You go to that house, it's so familiar. creepy. The first time I've seen it up close as allowed anyway. Didn't go there when I went to DC with my parents in the late 70s. Seeing the White House wasn't a priority for them since Jimmy Carter was in there. And now Donald's in there. Before I left this trip, throughout May, Donald seemed to be on an inevitable flame-out due to his high-stakes fuckery of firing FBI Director James Comey and joking about it behind closed doors with Russians as he spilled intelligence secrets to his buds. The cocksure narcissism of a rich, spoiled brat had him nearly admitting to obstruction of justice on TV. I'll try not to get worked up. Before I started the trip, I wondered if he'll still be there by the time I rolled up. Impeachment, resignation, palace coup seemed inevitable. But it took over 2 years between the Watergate break-in and Nixon's resignation, I keep reminding myself. He doesn't belong in there. A foreign object like a thorn gets slowly attacked by the body's defenses. Eventually pus builds up around it and becomes an inflamed mass. The ejection of the infecting object is always disgusting and will cause further wounds that'll need to heal. It's near 6 a.m., prime tweeting time. There's a light on in the upper right window. You can't see it here, but there's a light. There was a light up on. I thought he must be up there. But I discovered later that's actually the kitchen, so he wasn't there. Anyway, I imagine him there working to inscribe words on his phone with his thumbs, granting his furious wisdom to the nation and to the ages. I weakly quickly raise a middle finger towards the building, hand held close to my body. There are a few cops and guards hanging out by the fence. I didn't want to seem like I was giving them the bird. There were cops, they were kind of looking at me, not too worried. I didn't seem that suspicious.
Yeah, all right.
Shut up. And I don't want to seem like that I'm giving them the bird, and I don't really want to flip off the White House where great leaders, rotten crooks, flawed personalities, deep thinkers, shallow and mundane seat warmers have all been housed since John Adams moved there in 1800. Flipping it off is like flipping off all the continuous struggle for this land to live up to its ideals. It's impossible to flip off just slavery, the genocide of the natives, the ravaging of the environment without all men are created equal getting into the line of fire. It's impossible to just flip off Richard Nixon and Donald Trump without the ghosts of Franklin Delano Roosevelt or Abraham Lincoln seeing your obscene finger. But that guy in there now who seems to have proved that this might be a nation of suckers and manipulators, if only I could see him looking out of one of those windows, but he's probably watching Fox and Friends. I pedaled my bicycle here hundreds of miles. That's enough of a fuck you to the douchebag. Remember when he mocked Secretary of State Kerry for busting his leg in a bike crash in 2015? Remember that? Remember when? Nobody. I'm ranting. I'm sorry. The whole book isn't like this. I'm sorry. I futz about Lafayette Square, a little park across from the White House. Take a look at statues of foreigners. Lafayette, Koshescu, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, Rochambeau, who believed enough in this crazy-ass idea for a country to fight for it. I returned to my scowling point. It's getting later. I've been there about a half hour. Yoo-hoo, Donald. Hey, Donald, I've got something for you. I knocked dirt clumps off the bike. It's a definite act of childish disrespect for Donald, but one of respect for the nation, I swear. That's that mud pie that I decided to save. I just did that on a whim. I guess I wrote explaining. It's a definite act of childish disrespect for Donald, but one of respect for the nation, I swear. This dirt was gathered through the strenuous effort to see the beauty of young George Washington's land, to go where Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to stage a journey to find more of that good stuff. This dirt was gathered along the pathway that was the first major U.S. transportation project, This dirt came from an old root for doomed soldiers in a horrific war that rebirthed this whole all men are created equal thing. It's just dirt for Donald, but it's respect for Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, all the soldiers who fought for it. Respect even for the sorry-ass low-ranking Confederates who got themselves conned into fighting for rich slavers. And then I pedal away. You can read the rest of that. What time is it? And this is, I saved this for the climax of the book. This is that little gas station. After I drop my dirt off at the White House, I go riding back through town, and I go to the gas station, and I'm asking for a brush, if they got any brushes for sale, or any rags, is there anything I can use to clean off my bike? And this guy comes out, I'm pretty sure he's the owner because he's dressed like that, he's the boss. He's got a very heavy accent, and he's like, I've got a hose, let's go back here. And I wrote this, I had a request to read this part, where is it? Because Jules came, picked me up, we go to the next hotel, and I go downstairs, and it's early morning. Jules is still in bed. I wake up about 5 a.m. thinking I gotta move on, but I just gotta put the bike in the Honda, go stay in Ohio for a night, then back in Kalamazoo. I go downstairs to a cafe at the hotel, and they've got on gay club music at 6 a.m. I walk by the checkout lady. She says, I like your shirt. I tell her I got it at an antique store in Galesburg, Michigan. Have you ever been to Africa? She asks. She's from over that way. I can tell by her accent. No, I'm just a pretender, I say. I didn't tell her that it's a vintage Hawaiian J.C. Penney shirt. I think it's a fashion in Africa to wear very bright colored patterns on a shirt. Anyway, then I write some more that morning, drinking a lot of coffee. Why is that douchebag Trump even in this town? Even everybody here who works at hotels, restaurants, seems to be from somewhere else, or from the city's African-American majority. And why is it that when you hear of working class Americans, somebody seems to be talking about white folks? Other people are working class too. Yesterday, after glowering at the White House, I stopped at a little old gas station. Looks like it was built in the 20s, to work by the Watergate. I asked if they sold any brushes or something to get the canal trail dirt off my bike. The guys working in there, with all sorts of accents, said they didn't have any brushes, but they gave me a rag from back of the garage. Then the boss, I assume so because he was dressed in something other than garage coveralls, said he had a hose. He leads me around to the side of the station, turned on the hose and started spraying down my bike. Got all the filth off of it. I couldn't place his accent, maybe somewhere in Central South America. He finishes, he says, so you go, my man, and he gives me a soul handshake. This is America, and those who think otherwise are just bitter, ignorant shits. And for some reason, there's a continuum through that. It's not so ranty as I made it sound at the end, and it's not all about riding a bike, because that sounds like, but it's just that whole experience. I crammed it all into this book, and I will sell it to you for $20. But are there any questions out there? Yes.
Okay, so it took about 7 days to do this?
7 days.
And what scared me was I saw the elevation, which you said was kind of, not too bad, but then it goes like that.
Yeah.
When you looked at the trail, I didn't see any really downhill type.
Well, I didn't take any pictures looking downhill, but.
Are you going really fast on your bike at points? Or?
Well, when I start on the downhill end, you see a little bit of the downhill look in where I've got pictures of the Continental Divide area, but I didn't get a whole lot of pictures going downhill on that day because I was going downhill,
Really
and
fast.
it was the funnest part of the ride, and I didn't want to stop. I was going up to 19 miles an hour, and I almost collided with a deer. A deer jumped in front of me, and I couldn't almost hit it. I was just that day was just a fun day of flying down the hill. Yes.
What were the bugs, the mosquitoes that time of year?
They weren't that bad. I didn't, I was out there in the daytime. I wasn't in the shadow much. There was some cloudy, rainy weather, but I didn't get bit a whole lot at all. I did walk off into a bit of a side area, and I saw a lot of spiders, which of course scared me, because I'm afraid of spiders. But I didn't see a whole lot of bad bugs. It's not the Upper Peninsula. It looks like the Upper Peninsula in some spots, but not a lot of bugs.
What's next?
What's next? I'm going to ride my bike from St. Ignace to Copper Harbor.
Oh, wow.
And I bought a new bike. This bike is now semi-retired. Oops. This bike is now semi-retired because, well, it's held together with a rusty paperclip here, and I had to get a new wheel because all the mud started making a grinding noise, and I had to get new pedals because they were grinding, and I thought, I'm going to just get a new bike. And I got a bike perfect for the Upper Peninsula ride. It's called the Surly Troll. It's by a company called Surly, and it's a bike called the Troll. And that's what I am, and what I will be in the Upper Peninsula. Anything else? Yes?
Are you going on roads? I'm trying to figure out trailing.
This was all 2 very long trails. I did have to go off-road a little bit to get the motels.
No, I mean, from St. Ignace.
Oh, St. Ignace, that's going to be a combination of trails and road. I've been on the Upper Peninsula before. In the Upper Peninsula, some of the highways, some of the state highways, paved roads are very dead. You feel like an apocalypse must have happened.
Yeah.
So I don't feel too much endangered there. I've ridden on roads in the Lower Peninsula. I've ridden on the streets of Kalamazoo. I felt like I've come close to death many times. I want to remind everybody to not text when you're driving, and to please give at least 3 or maybe 5 feet of passing when you pass a bicycle on the road, please. Because it feels like we're going to die sometimes when we do this. Why do it? I don't know. Any other questions? I've got, oh my God, it's 18 after. I've got a book that I've been working on that's about Michigan writing, and it's about maybe a little bit of New Orleans writing and stuff. And I've been working on it for a few years. I hope to write it and finish it by Christmas of this year. And I've been thinking of a title. I've been thinking of calling it Pedalhead. And because it's inspired by some of the music, a very inspirational tune that I like to listen to. I like it whenever it comes up on my iPod when I'm riding, and I just start pedaling faster. The song is called Motorhead, but I'm going to call my book Pedalhead. I'm going to play it. And
Yeah.